Welcome, everybody. I hope everyone's doing well. Everyone's feeling happy. Everyone's in a good space right now, whether it's your physical space or just a mental place, emotional place. I hope that you're having a great day. So we're going to be moving around just a tiny bit during this video in an effort to try and get some breeze. It's a little hot today. And yes, I am downstairs. Don't worry, we won't stay in this space. We'll get into a prettier space. But today's episode is a question. Are you a indigo? So you might wonder what an indigo is. I'm going to pose two suggestions to you. If you came across this and you've never heard the expression an indigo before, it might be an interesting time in your life, a good time in your life to do a little bit of research on it. And know that it's not only the word indigo. A lot of times, usually the way people will refer to you if they've decided that you are an indigo child is to say indigo child or indigo adult. So a lot of people now are saying indigo adult because these indigo children started coming around a long time ago, but specifically most of us were recognized as indigo children usually late 90s or early 2000s. That's not to say that if you're a millennial, you're automatically an indigo. It's not like that at all. So the belief of the indigo child or the indigo adult is something that's, by the way, that's not my liquor, FYI. The belief of the indigo child or the indigo adult, it's something that could get complex, but it's actually very simple. It's the idea that every so many years, every couple hundred years, there's a sort of, it's like a shakeup, okay? So every couple hundred years, something happens and there's a major revolution. It's not just in one country or in one place. It's something that literally changes the world. And I'm not really talking about war, although it would be easy to go to that place. It would be easy to say, okay, the end of World War I, the end of World War II. That must be what she's talking about. It's not actually. It's more like every so often in humanity, as one, almost like a single organism, all these different social groups make these huge changes, huge strides. And they do experience a certain amount of discomfort. But in the end, whatever they started to do, they not only see through, but it unblocks a lot of things. It allows people to connect with each other. So let me give you a good example of what I mean. So for instance, when the Berlin Wall came down, that's the sort of thing I'm talking about. The Underground Railroad, that was leading up to something bigger. The time when the internal struggle in America was over and the North won. Sorry, Confederates, when the North won and slaves were given freedom, were sold back to themselves. When humans recognized and demanded that other humans recognized each other as human and had basic human rights. The Declaration of Independence. These sorts of things are usually seen as something that's born from a huge struggle, but in actuality, it was all coming to a head. And a lot of times people will assume, well, the head was the war. But no, actually, the end of the war, the end of the struggle, is usually a particular idea or ideal being seen to its flourishing. And so typically the people who are at the heads of these major social changes are or had been people of a similar ilk. Not all of them were indigo children, but a lot of times because of the cycle of life, they were recognized as a specific kind of soul or even as an old soul. So that's not to say that we should automatically assume if we meet someone who says, I'm an indigo adult. That never happens, by the way. But if you ever meet someone who says, oh, that's my kid, and they're an indigo child, it's really interesting. Don't assume that necessarily they're right. A lot of times people who aren't indigos assume that you are an indigo if you just like old stuff. Liking old stuff isn't necessarily it. Having an old soul, necessarily it. There's a lot of different pieces that make the whole. So let's go ahead and actually just bring this together. Indigo children are people who are here in many different belief systems, all these different belief systems around the world. All the oldest cultures around the world have many belief systems, and in each one of those belief systems of the oldest cultures around the world, let's look at India, let's look at China, let's look at Egypt, let's look at anywhere else you can think of, let's look at Rome. All of these cultures have many belief systems, and within each of those belief systems, there's a belief that there is a child who is born of a old soul. Think of it like recycling. And that they come around specifically and unwittingly to some degree to help people not only move on from an old way of doing things, but to help usher in something new. They're sort of like that candle on the birthday cake. They're sort of like that firecracker that lights everything else on fire. And then when the fire goes away, it's something better. They're like, I haven't seen it happen, but it could. They're like that piece of paper you light, flash paper, and it's gone in a flash. There's something else that's been revealed to you. They're like a magician. They're like a catalyst. They are a human catalyst, and they're there to help other people awaken, so to speak, to themselves. Usually, you'll be able to recognize these people in yourself a lot of times. If you're looking for this, chances are you might be you might be a indigo child, and I'll tell you how it relates to being an INFJ as well. But if you find that you are constantly asking people what it is that they truly want, what it is that they truly see themselves doing, if you're helping people on a much deeper level, you might be an indigo child. This is something that indigo children do. They bring out the truth in people. And they usually don't have a great time lying. They usually don't like it. It's uncomfortable for them. It makes them feel pain or great discomfort. I found out I was an indigo child more than 20 years ago, and I'm an indigo adult. And sometimes what we're meant to do, what we are told we're meant to do, is to heal people. You might notice that maybe you have this natural gift for stepping in and helping someone when they're sick, or you might seem to always be around when someone's dog goes missing. You seem to always be around when a neighbor falls. This is me. Every single time there was a kid missing in the neighborhood, somehow they always crossed my path. Every single time someone had fallen down, they always crossed my path. Every time someone's dog had gone missing on my street, they always crossed my path. Nobody else saw them. It was always me, and I always returned them. And it is a blessing, and it's not a curse, but it can be really difficult to deal with sometimes, to always be that person. And so naturally, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily a great person, but it means that you're a little bit more aligned, and some people will see this as being a little bit more of a child, in that you don't forget what it is that made you happy when you were a kid. You don't forget who you truly are. You might get better and better at denying it, but you never forget it. A lot of people really do fall, quote unquote, out of touch with their true selves, what they really love, what they really like, what makes them them. Indigo children don't. You knew you before anybody else did. You were 5 years old and you were standing around wondering why people were acting like total jackasses. Was that you? Were you 10 years old and you saw people acting crazy? You saw people doing really weird, really stupid stuff. You saw people doing really infantile things, and you never did those things. And people thought that you were a weirdo for not doing things that were weird. Here's a good example. This is going to be really, really gross. Alert, this is going to be really gross. Have you ever been that kid surrounded by older kids, and all the older kids are talking about their junk? And they're literally saying, well, so-and-so's only measured this long. Well, so-and-so's only measured that long. Well, I think hers are a B cup. They're just literally standing around talking about each other's genitals and literally sizing up who's better according to who has the bigger or longer or somehow better parts. And you're just standing around going, really? This is what I'm supposed to be looking forward to? You guys have all this power. I remember saying this once, you guys have all of this power. And they said, what are you talking about, power? Well, what power do we have? I said, you can learn. You can learn so much. You're supposed to have a bigger brain than I am. You're supposed to be so much farther along, but look at you. You're just obsessed with yourselves. If you're so obsessed with your own body parts, how are you ever going to get out in the world and learn about the world and change it? And they were like, wow, you are a really weird kid. And I'm like, really? 1 inch, 2 inches, B cup. We know each other right now by this new labeling system you guys just came up with. And I'm the weird one because I want to see the world, because I want to learn. If you were that kid who was standing there going, wow, older people are Neanderthals. If you were that kid who, no, I don't really want to go somewhere and light stuff on fire. You know, I've got a pretty good thing going on at home. And I mean, it's not fantastic, but they'll help me learn what I need to learn so that I can go to, you know, Mount Fuji. That'd be good. Fiji, whatever. It would be really good. In fact, I'd learn how to pronounce it correctly. And yeah, I'm working so that I can get my passport soon. If you were that kid and everybody else is going, little kid, why do you want a passport? And your answer was to see the world. Or your answer was, I really feel like I need to be in northern China right now and I don't know why. That was my answer. I really feel like I need to be in northern China right now and I don't know why. And their answer is, whoa, why northern China? Well, because in the area, or what they're calling right now, this was back in 95, the settlement known as northern China, well, what I'm actually talking about is Tibet, and I really think that I need to be there. So I'm trying to learn Tibetan, but I can't find any good, and I couldn't pronounce the word at the time. I was trying, I was like, audiology. They said, audiology? Yes. Can't find any good audiology. They don't have any Barnes & Noble, or Book a Book, or Books A Million, or any of the other places. Do you know Tibetan? No, we don't know Tibetan. Can you teach me Sanskrit? No, we cannot. I don't even know what that is. That was childhood. That was childhood. And if you had a childhood that was similar to that, if you had moments when people were acting the fool and you just stepped over to whoever you were closest to and just went, so is this normal? And they ask you, what normal? People doing this. Those people are rolling around over there. They're in some sort of a fight, but they're laughing. Those ones are like poking each other and then laughing. That one's trying to climb a wall. These people are almost 20 years old. Is this what I have to look at? Is this normal? Yeah, it kind of is. But I don't think you're going to be a part of it. If that reminds you of a part of your childhood, might well be an indigo. But it goes further than that. So, if you're in a hospital and your loved one is very sick and they are deep asleep, not coma, but they're deep asleep, indigo child. If you feel this need to help other people that you don't know, you have no connections to them at all, except for the connection that you're in the proximity, it's a good sign you might be an indigo child. If you have this ability of persuasion, not necessarily with your family members, let's be honest, family can be the hardest on us, and sometimes they know us the least, right? So not with them. But if you have this ability to walk up to total strangers and just say, I did this for one person. I'm not going to say who, I'm not going to say when, because I was doing it on their behalf and they asked me to do it. But technically, it might have not have been totally legal, but I was asked to do it and I was directed to do it. And he even signed a piece of paper that he directed me to write up and bring him so he could sign it. So I was helping this person. This was the very first time that I advocated for somebody in the hospital that I can remember. I know I did it as a little kid a couple of times too, but in a very different way. It wasn't formal like that as a kid. Yeah, and so I walked over to the unit leader of the ICU and I said, I'm the daughter of so and so, and he wants his sons to come and visit him immediately. And the unit leader said, You're the daughter of so and so? I said, Yes. She said, I'm not sure if I believe you. Why should I believe that? I said, Because he's my father. And are you really questioning me? I'm not only his next of kin, I'm his closest kin. I'm the only kin who's here. And I'm very disturbed by my father's treatment. He's asking for help and he wants to contact his sons. He wants you to call his sons and he wants them here. And that is a part of his basic rights, not only as a human being, but specifically as a patient. She just looked at me and she went, What are the names of his sons? I said, That's for you to find out. The numbers are there. You need to call it. She looked at me like, said, Okay, look, get their names, come back with the names, I'll do it. We both knew there was no way that I could be his daughter unless he had had an affair with one of his workers, which at some point apparently he did. He wasn't the best of people, frankly, in some ways. Specific ways, he might not have been a paragon of virtue, but he just told me, okay, look, the next time you go up there, first of all, here are the sons' names. I should have told you that. And secondly, you're the product of my time with my maid in whatever age you are, that's when it happened back then. And I went, Really? The maid? He went, Yeah, maid. Just go do it. I went, Okay, fine. So I went back, I did that. She said, You know what? I'm going to do it. I went, Okay, good. He deserves that. And she did it. Yes, part of it is the person who was there on the other side was willing to do that. But also, yes, part of it was there was one person who was willing to walk up to someone, tell a lie that made absolutely no sense, and do that for someone that needed it because it was a fellow human being. On some deeper level, as an indigo child, you don't see every human being as some other human. You see them as some other brother or sister that you just don't know. Everyone is like that. So if you've ever felt like that, like you just need to reach out and help somebody else that you don't even know, and then you do, and it doesn't make any sense how it went through. Technically, it should not have worked. Someone who's usually a hard-nosed, name the bad word, who doesn't let anybody get away with anything, lets you get away with something like that. Someone decides to help you despite the fact that what you're doing is technically not exactly through the legal channels, but you're doing it on behalf of somebody else. Someone who usually doesn't give a damn about other people, suddenly gives a damn just because you do, who's usually never swayed by anybody. That's the persuasion. That's the power of being an indigo child, actually, really. It is. You can walk up and you can be there with your pure motives. I'm not going to say pure heart, but with your pure motives, and other people recognize it and they feel something really deep. And they might bark at you, and then they leave the screen, so to speak. You don't see them for a little while. And you come back, you find out they facilitated whatever they could so that the thing that you wanted to happen happens. Because they are moved by how naturally moved you were to help somebody else. That's one of the powers of being an indigo child. So let me just go back through that. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but you seem to be the oldest one in the room, even when you're 10 or even when you're 5. B, and I know I forgot to mention this, people who don't know you walk up to you and then walk up to your parents and say, I see a halo around this kid, or I see a white cloud around this kid, and I only see it when I look at your kid. And your parents' response might be, why are you looking at my kid? But that's sort of what happens. If someone just walked up to you one time as a child and walked up to whoever they assumed was your parent and went, I see a purple cloud or sort of like a white mist around your kid, and I'm wondering how you're doing that because that's really cool. I'd like to do that for my kid for Halloween. These are people who are not in any way normally doing spiritual type stuff. They're not very Christian, or they're not very Hindu, they're not very Buddhist, they're not very this, that, or the other thing, but they walk up and they just go, I see colors around this kid. What is with that? And they're thinking that it's real because it's so real for them. That's something that happens to all indigo kids at least once. Really does. And if it hasn't happened to you yet and you're 35 or you're 40, get ready because it's gonna. The other thing that happens is you feel moved to ask if anybody else is being taken care of and how you can help them. And the last thing is the indigo power of persuasion. You can walk up to someone with your pure motives and they feel it inside of them. And whether or not they're honest on the outside, their actions speak volumes and they help somebody else. There's a lot more that can help you figure out if you're an indigo child or adult. But this video has already been 21 minutes, so I'm going to end it now, and I'm going to go on in another video and tell you some of the other stuff that you may or may not know that might help you figure out if you are an indigo adult. Okay, all right. Thank you guys very, very much. Be good.